Michael, we're still waiting just another couple minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, Anne, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. We just got back from vacation and had some talk about old houses and saving them. They also our dishwasher leaked. So
Oh, no.
yeah. So we were kind of dealing with some stuff. So I wasn't able to make it in.
Sorry about that. Well, here's the good thing. You have a full house.
All right.
Everyone.
Nice.
Which is awesome. So if you wanted to go ahead, do you need me to put the agenda up on the screen? Because I can maneuver around and get the agenda up, or are you okay?
I think I'm okay.
All right. I will let you kick off. We probably would want to start, since we don't have anyone, like, we're not going to bother anyone doing that first. If you want to have everyone introduce themselves because we have a new member.
Yes, absolutely. So I guess I'll go first. I'm Ann Halbach. I'm the chair. I've been on the HPC since 2018, and I live in a Century home in Webster, and I work in Webster and just love the area. And obviously want to try to save as many historic properties as we can.
Michael, since you're on Zoom, do you want to go next?
Yep. I'm Michael Rose. I also live in a 100+ year-old house. Mara, you're gonna have to help me with this because I've lost track of time with COVID. Was it 2020 or was it 2019 that I started?
I feel like it was 2019. It might have been 2020.
I've been on since either April of 2019 or April of 2020. I'll go with that.
Just go around.
I'm Carol. I'm an architect, retired from active practice after 30 years. And I'm kind of keeping in touch by doing HPC, and I'm also on the Architectural Review Board. And I've done a lot of historic projects, public and private, and lots of tax credits for both commercial and residential.
She was on ARB for Chesterfield when I was at Chesterfield.
Oh, sorry.
I'm Angela. I am also an architect and have worked in historic preservation for many years. And I have been on the Historic Preservation Commission for some amount of time. Years, so maybe, I don't know, something like that. Not a real long time. And I do live in a century-old house that I love.
I'm Hillary Perkins. I'm a recently retired city planner for the city of Maryland Heights. Been as a planner over 20 years, both in the public and private sector. I live in an almost century house. Our house was built in 1927, so the assessor's office does. If I had known what an architectural historian was when I was 17 or 18 years old making those decisions, I probably would have been one, because I just love it. And it's just my avocation as opposed to my I really like it. I'm a volunteer at the Hawken House. I've been helping do archival research, which is a load of fun. And so. Great.
I'm Sue Indelicato. I met Hillary at the Hawken House. We were both volunteers there. And I have no background at all in any kind of architecture or anything like that, just a love of preserving history. And I think that I've been on the board a little over a year now. So
Doug Stanley. I've probably been on the board the longest. And I took a little hiatus for, I don't know, a year or so, and then came back because I decided I missed it and I liked it and they took me back. So I was happy that that happened. And live in a century home in Webster and very interested in us educating and trying to keep these old houses. I was on the board at a time when the rules were different. We have new ordinances, relatively new ordinances now. And we saw a couple, Ann and I think we're on together at that time. We saw a couple of houses that we wanted to save and there was nothing we could do about it. They weren't in a historic district and they were really gems in my opinion. And so we strengthened the ordinances and I think we've got a way to preserve them.
Emily Shepherd, I'm the council liaison, so I've been here a little over a year now, I guess. And I live in Century Home too, but it's not like a Century Home, it's like a little bucket of. We don't have a plaque yet or anything, but we want to do the research to do that. I don't know, it's 1920 or 1904, it depends on who you ask, but either way, we're past 1922, so. Yeah, I like. I come to bring news from council and from this back to council. That's my role.
And everybody knows me.
All right, well, welcome Hillary. We're really excited that you joined and thank you for volunteering your time. So first thing, to go over the approval of minutes for the June meeting. Obviously, we did not meet for July. So if you guys want to review the June 13th meetings minutes. And if anybody has a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the June 13 minutes as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, so moving on, I don't believe we have any public hearings tonight. Do we have any visitor comments? No, okay. So that's on to new business. We do have 3 demolition recommendations. We'll start with the first one, which is 502 North Elm Avenue, which is a single family dwelling. And according to the notes provided by staff, they do recommend the approval of the request to demolish the existing single-family dwelling structure at the subject property without holding the request for additional review. And it looks like this property was built in 1925, and there was no records found pertaining to historic property inventory. It was not previously identified as an at-risk property, and I think there were a few photos that were submitted.
I didn't have any issues with this.
Me neither.
Me either.
that mean? Like?
Oh,
not
there-
information or?
Yeah, oh, so they're supposed to show us if there was a recent sale. And in the case of some of these, they got this one, I think they bought in 2004, so there were no recent sales. So
Oh, I
it's just
see.
basically
Okay.
identifying, yeah.
Okay.
I give them a checklist and I'm like, I need these items, and a lot of times it's just a piece of paper that says, we don't have anything. Some are more organized than others.
Does anybody have any questions about the property
I did
or any
take drive-by,
discussion?
And they're all horrible, you know, yeah, uninhabitable. And this day, you know.
Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the demolition request for 502 North Elm Avenue?
I'll make a motion to approve the demolition request for 502 North Elm Avenue.
Second.
All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, so moving on to the second property, which is 543 North Elm Avenue. Again, staff's recommendation is they approve the request to demolish the existing single-family dwelling at the subject property without holding the request for additional review. This property was built in 1926. There had been no found records pertaining to historic property inventory sheet. It has not been previously identified as an at-risk property. That should be looked at for historic designation. And again, this one also does have some photos. It looks like this one was purchased more recently than the past, in September 2022. I think this one looks a little bit more worse from where in the pictures than the previous one.
Can I ask a quick question, just for a little clarification?
Yes,
At the very bottom, so on the very last page at the very bottom, it says occupancy of these premises is limited to one family of no more than 0 members. Is that the polite way of saying that this house should not be lived in at all?
it's not, it's just that in the system, we didn't necessarily have an occupancy number and we didn't take the
Okay.
time to remeasure.
Okay. That's good, yeah. Thank you.
Yes,
Does it look like the property owner is the same on all three of these?
so the property owner is the same on all three. And when we're done, I'll talk to you about upcoming ones.
Well, it looks like the owners, I guess, is Under Properties, which I believe is a local business.
All the LLCs that you will see on either these and some future ones will be under.
Does anyone want to make a motion to approve demolition of 543 North Elm Avenue?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, and then moving on to our third and final demolition recommendation, it's for 102 Madison Avenue. Again, it's staff recommends the approval of the request made to demolish the existing single-family dwelling structure without holding the request for additional review. This property was built in 1923. The city has found no records pertaining to historic property inventory sheet. It has not been previously identified as an at-risk property. And again, photos have been submitted. This property was purchased in March of 2022. And I guess per what Mara had said, this has also been purchased by Onder Properties, like the last two properties.
There's really no grounds to hold it for review, so I have no objection.
So I'll move that we approve the demolition request for 102 Madison Avenue.
Second.
All those in favor?
I,
Is there anyone opposed? Okay. So that brings us to our old business, which the only item on our agenda to discuss is possible 2023 projects. I know at the last meeting in June, we had discussed some ideas of possible projects we could look into possibly taking on, which I think there were a few brought up as far as researching grants, possibly doing a national designation on a local property. I know we did have the two gentlemen from Jefferson City come in and present to us with some ideas. So that was also discussed in that June meeting. So I didn't know if anybody else had any thoughts, any ideas, any questions, any projects that you feel you absolutely want to begin working on.
yeah, I'm gonna hang on to that idea of the conservation districts, and I'm not letting go anytime soon. So, just to warn y'all, fair warning, I know, Mara, you are dancing as fast as you can with being sort of a one-person show on many occasions. If we could get background information on what is in our zoning code and in the whole municipal code currently that could support our formal creation or announcement of the possibility of doing conservation districts. Because I think it's very important that we continue to add tools to our toolkit, mechanisms that we can use to raise awareness of historic preservation and to support people who want to do ground roots stuff like preserving smaller homes or preserving their subdivision the way it is. Because I talk to so many people who feel helpless. It's like, it's the government, and you can't talk to the government, and developers just do whatever they want. There's a lot of frustration. So I think if we can put together and make it public that there are mechanisms that ground roots efforts can make a difference in this, I think it's very important. And I really, like I said, I'll just keep it up. So I think that that's very important.
So really quick, I've not found anything in our codes that has the ability to use something as our backup. Doesn't mean we can't put it in the codes. We definitely could. But I also don't want to forget that with the comprehensive plan project moving forward at some point soon, I would hope we will be moving through the steps since it was approved in the council's budget. That will be something that can be talked about, both about sustainability, conservation districts, historic. Those are things that we could potentially put into the comprehensive plan in terms of some of the guidance and direction. But right now, I have not found anything that specifically supports through the zoning ordinance or our code, the creation of conservation districts. But that doesn't mean that there isn't something we could do.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
did do as much as I could. I kind of guessed that I wasn't going to find anything specific. And then I do want to go back to, I can't remember if you attended it also. There was a webinar from I attended a webinar about conservation districts.
Yes.
That one, I think we can get some additional guidance from about some things that we might be able to do.
Yes, and also too, I don't know if any surrounding communities here,
That I hadn't looked at yet.
yeah, have anything
In the
that,
county, that would be good.
yeah, that we can model after. So, and I do think also too, I know we had talked a little bit about the comprehensive plan and about what would be needed from us as a commission to make sure that historic preservation is properly represented in the plan. So do you have any more information for
I
us?
know I've
Emily?
talked about it and we talked about having historic preservation in the plan and sustainability in the plan as well. I know we approved the creation of comprehensive plan in the budget, so I'm sure that there will, as that rolls along, we'll just keep it that in front, those are things that we want to make sure get included.
So could you give me a little overview about how the plan is going to be created?
So the way that it works with most communities is you put out a request for proposals or a request for qualifications for companies to be hired to do the comprehensive plan process. The process we looked at, we put in the budget $150,000. So that would include a series of public meetings. It would include a series of like smaller meetings, either with boards, with commissions. The list of what we want in that comprehensive plan would include, like, we want to focus on sustainability, or we want to focus on housing affordability, or we want to just a whole list of business development, but we focus on what are some of the layers that we want to integrate. Because the comprehensive plan is that guiding document for the city, and our comprehensive plan for the document itself was last updated in 1978. So they're going to look at whether it's, quote, an update, because we do have in 2004 through 2006, they did meet with the various business districts and focused on just updating business districts. And then in 2017, we took the map from 78 and all the maps from 2006, and we integrated them into one. So the key question is, can we build off of that 2017, or do they want us to go all the way back to 78? But either way, we'll be working with a proposal that the council will move forward of either the request for proposal or just a request for qualifications if we've already outlined what we want. And then from there, meetings will be scheduled. There will be determinations on, do we have a guiding committee? Do we have, this many residents who are on a specific committee, or do we have them meet with a series of different, again, like meet with each commission, or how many public meetings are we going to have? When's the document? So there'll be a whole series with timing for all of that to finally come out with a final guiding document.
And that public engagement is really important to everybody, so that will be robust.
And so you have not issued an RFP or
Nope.
anything? You're
Nope.
just creating it right now? or-
I have not started.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
It's the main system right now.
Yeah, it was approved, and technically July 1st, it was put in the budget. So that's the step that had been done so far. We have samples from other cities. So we grabbed, like, Kirkwood recently in the last few years did one where they did an update to their last one, and then they do sort of yearly updates with that. We also grabbed, I think maybe Creve Court. We grabbed a few local ones, and then on the national level, we can grab other examples for how the different ones did it. But no, I haven't yet been tasked to do that next step. So there's other things that the council has asked for that I'm working on. Some city land stuff and some other stuff. Yeah, just a couple of things.
Okay, they're not, so, not yet.
Not yet. But there were all these different things that, like someone's concerned with historic preservation, and then the liaison to sustainability says, oh, don't forget, we need to put the sustainability. So there's all of that, and we've got the DEI now, and we've got some other things. So all of that, and looking at how other cities have integrated those principles into the comprehensive plan.
And just to back up there, Kirkwood updates it every year? Is that what you
No,
said?
they have an update to see how they are doing. So they had, it was a little unusual. So when I saw what they did something where they did not completely rewrite their old plan. They did a new plan. And then they have something where they go back to their plan commission, I think every year, and just say, here's how we're doing on whatever we were supposed to be working on. Like they kind of have some things that they do as an update.
Which is really good because
Oh,
you
yeah.
just sit on the shelf.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
things don't, if the plan gets used and it doesn't just, like you said,
Sit on a
collect
shelf.
dust, or if things don't fall between the cracks, oh, well, this was supposed to be happening, but for whatever reason it didn't.
And it sounds like there was one that like got almost there, but never fully approved by the council, or was that the maps?
No, so just the business districts. When they spent 2 years with public hearings and meetings and all the other stuff and made this big document. And in the end, the city council only approved the maps of that document. So that 2004 to 2006, it was not a comprehensive plan update. It was more of small area plans. It had specifics of how many units should be built, and it had architectural guidelines in it, and it had development numbers in it. It's not a comprehensive plan. And so I think they finally realized after doing all of that work that it wasn't a comprehensive plan. And so they only adopted the maps. So in 2006, they adopted maps that said this area should be mixed use, or this area should be commercial, or this area should be whatever. And they did all of that. And so in 2017, because I was constantly, someone would come in and I'd look at the 78 map, and then I'd look and see if there was something different on the 2006 map. We integrated those maps with one another, as well as the maps from 2006 were too detailed. They had footprints of buildings, which you don't want to have a footprint of building in your comprehensive plan, because you're supposed to be looking at, how can you work? So we did update the maps. So the only thing that was approved by the council in 2006 was the maps from this document.
Another good thing about doing a lot of how are we doing steps is you can hold departments accountable. So, this is, we want to have, I'm just gonna make something up, better sidewalks. Who's responsible for that? Public Works. And so you go to Public Works and say, did you put more sidewalks in? And so you can say, yeah, we put in, 15% of our goal. I'm just, again, making up numbers, but that's very helpful in terms of, holding the individuals accountable, because if you don't do that, then you can say, well, why didn't we build sidewalks? I don't know. No, it was supposed to.
Yeah. Measurable tactics, which is, we're actually doing tactics right now with some in the strategic plan. And so we've got strategic plan tactics, but then the comprehensive plan can have elements in it that we can work with.
Could you tell me more about conservation areas?
And Angela can probably chime in here, she probably knows more than I do, but like, say, just for example, like if there were a subdivision that was all built at once, and they had certain architectural characteristics and landscape features, and they want to preserve that look, they can create a conservation district that says, okay, if anybody's going to come in here and build something new or alter something, we all want to be no taller than 1.5 stories. And they can actually just kind of pick out what elements are important to them and say, from here on, this is who we want to be, this is how we want to look. And so it's not necessarily sort of from a top-down thing. It can be something that people in an area decide they want to do. And there's a mechanism for them to put that in place and to make it efficient.
And it's better, it's not better, it's easier to use for kind of everybody. In the sense of like, say you have one of these neighborhoods that's like a small red brick ranch rambler homes, and the whole, and some of those you drive, they're lovely, right? And maybe all those people look at it like, we like it this way, we don't want someone to come in and build, whether it's 2 stories or build something that's just way different, one of these new McMansion farmhouse ideas, kind of things. They don't want it. Well, they could do it. They could say everything here has to stay red brick, and they could say that. That could be, it could also be their only qualification of it all, if they wanted to. So it could be a little bit different than Stewart District in that sense of it. Doesn't have anything to do with the time period or whatever. It has to do with whatever they decide. So, you know, it
Scale
could
or
be-
materials.
it could be
or- yeah.
more, yeah, it could be from kind of simple. They could make it very complicated, of course, but it could be something very simple like that too.
Would that be just like a guideline, or how would you enforce that? Somebody buys a piece of property, if it's in the zoning, it, you know, they want to put a McMansion up and they meet all the other requirements.
Though they don't, so, yeah, it's basically part of the.
So you wouldn't issue a building permit, in other words, on something that's.
It's like an overlay district.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's an overlay district. And when we were on this webinar, they were giving all different types of ways you can do conservation that were more than just, it was about the architecture, but there were just so many layers of the different ways you could use conservation districts.
And it was so flexible. I mean, it was things like, you know, how the driveways approach the houses and, you know, they're just all of, yeah,
Whatever you want. It'd just be different than the zoning.
Yeah.
It's something they want.
Do all the owners of the district have to agree on these rules, or how's that? How do you?
That's what it has to be in the, like Mara's saying, that's what has to be decided by the city to make the conservation district or area. The city has to have a rule.
Oh, like
different than the
75%
store.
or
Yeah,
whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah.
You can't have.
There has to be a
because, yeah, you
process
can't have
and
3 people
threshold
say
that we're doing it.
you know,
Yeah, and everybody else has to follow that.
And, yeah.
Or an expectation that's 100%.
Yeah, exactly. It's never gonna be a 100%.
outliers.
right.
But
And that way, you know, if people have small homes that they enjoy and they don't want to look 10 feet outside their window and see a wall of dark gray vinyl siding, and that's all they can see, which happens like
Oh, yeah.
a lot. And it really it reduced to me, and I think to a lot of people I've talked to, it reduces the livability of our smaller homes to be surrounded. We don't have sunlight anymore. I mean, we can't see the sunrise, the sunset. I mean, it actually does cut off the breeze. It's like all of a sudden your house got dropped into the bottom of an empty well. And a lot of people are like, well, you know what? I used to love living here, but I don't anymore. And so I think that's one of the subtle ways that we lose affordable housing, is that it's no longer appealing because it's been swallowed up by things that are too big. I mean, that just overwhelm them. I know we can just drive down the streets and see that. And I think if people had some mechanism or some recourse to say, hey, let's just put this in place, that this is what we want to do. It would be empowering.
Can I ask a question? This might be kind of a dumb question, but obviously anywhere you drive around in Webster, we're not like a cookie cutter community. And Carol, kind of what you just said, there's smaller houses and then right next door is a, 3-story gray sided brand new build. So how, I guess I'm still trying to wrap my head around how do we make this happen when we already have those situations where new builds have come in and disrupted, maybe the small feel of a street that was just bungalows or.
So Anne, probably it's best to explain it in this way. Some zoning codes in certain cities have a mechanism for someone to do what's called an overlay. So like right now, the only overlay we have is for planned environment units where people want to take a piece of land, they can build a couple extra units if they focus their units to preserve some open space or less driveways, or it's related to the environment. In some communities, they have it as a conservation district. So a group of, and it depends on how many the code says, a group of owners can get together and request that overlay, which would be different from, and it would have a new set of regulations that could make a change, that could say, even though your zoning says this is what the overlay comes on top of. And it's another set of regulations or a different set of regulations or something, but it's not as, it can be a little bit more flexible. Versus again, in the PEU, it's very specific. You can only have like, you still have to have a certain amount of land square footage for the number of units. You can't just pile, 20 units on and say, well, I'm saving the back. And there's a process and it goes to the planning commission and it goes to the city council and then it gets approved. So there is like an overlay that goes on top of a zoning area. And I'll check and see. I checked to confirm that there was nothing in ours already that would allow it. We have our PEU. We also have what's called a MEC, Major Educational Campus. Like we have an overlay for that. But those are the two overlays we have. We don't have one that could be more just for conservation.
So one thing too is that I know that it can be done the same way a historic district is done. And that if you have some house that just plain doesn't fit, but it's smack in the middle, or this building that is a non-contributing element to your district, it's the property is still included in the district. Anything that is done to that property in the future, those things apply. So, a great big huge house and it's only supposed to be a little tiny house, that's a little tricky one, but it still can't be any bigger, right? They would not be able to build onto that house or whatever. It would, if it's brand new, it's not going anywhere anytime soon, but if it ever were, it would need to then be a smaller house actually. So if you were, going with that kind of rule.
Yeah, it's nothing that would be retroactive. It would be just going forward.
Yeah.
And sometimes maybe some big, rocket ship house shooting out in the middle of a neighborhood might be the impetus for people to say, yeah, we don't want any more of this. So, yeah, it's and like some communities have different types of conservation districts, like where there's large parcels of wooded land. They may say, hey, if you're going to buy this parcel of land, you can only clear 30%. So there's all kinds of different types of conservation districts, but I think here we're primarily talking about architectural.
So Carol, I know this is a passion project of yours, and I personally would like to kind of do a little bit more of my own research on this, because I feel like I'm understanding what you guys are saying, but I guess I'm trying to think of how can we and what do we need to do as a commission to start moving this forward as a project? So do you have any ideas on that? I mean, is our first steps just doing some research, or like, I guess.
There was that webinar, Mara. Can we access recording of that?
That's what I was gonna check and
Because
see.
it's really very good about talking about what you can and can't do and what the process is. Yeah, I know both Mara and I attended it, and perhaps if that could be forwarded to everybody who could, just kind of take a look at it and get a feel, that might be a really good starting point.
Yeah, I'm gonna find out if we can access it. I felt like after the fact, they'd given us the ability to look
I thought
at
they
it.
gave us a link. I can go.
Yeah, oh, and I have it. I know
Yeah.
I have it. So I can
Okay.
do that. And if not, I also could contact them and say, because it's not like we're trying to get credits for it at this point, like, I got my credits.
Yeah.
But I'll try to get access to that. So that would be one first step. A second step would be doing the research of other ones or examples in other areas. And then this would potentially be a joint project with Plan Commission, could be the thing that would happen, because you can definitely put it in here. Similar to, we could write it in as another level of, like, right now you guys can do historic districts. Maybe the conservation districts stay in the HPC chapter, versus the zoning chapter, possibly, I don't know. If you're gonna keep it in that focus, or it could go in the zoning chapter. So it's sort of like, right now, we have historic districts that are overlaid on top of, zoning areas. We could potentially see it might be able to stay in this chapter. It might need to go in the plan commission zoning. And if so, we could have a joint meeting with the plan commission. We could add it to that agenda since I'm liaison to them too.
So one question, if it's just in the, under the historic preservation section, like could other situations, like for instance, sustainability, say they had something they wanted to do, everybody has to have. I don't know,
Rain barrels.
Yeah, whatever,
Yeah.
something. Would they be able to use it because it's under historic preservation,
I
or
think
would then it need?
I think it depends on how we would write it. So I think we can look at it in multiple facets. And I just want to see what other cities have done. I mean, it could be that the focus first is the preservation aspect, and then it can expand beyond potentially. I guess it just depends on how we want it, what tact we want to take. Because even if you put it in plan commission, in zoning, you're still not specifically in like a sustainability, like
Yeah.
so it's almost like it almost needs to be in, we have another chapter for tree preservation and green, so there's a couple different arms that it could go in, and the question would be, if it goes into one, can it be replicated in all of them? Should it go in one first and then you see how it goes and then potentially put it in others? There's probably lots of directions. So I'd say first, let's see how other cities in, either in the county are doing it or in the state or other states. And then we'll confirm that we can get access to the webinar so everyone can watch the webinar. And then that can give us maybe a direction for where we would go. And then there's still other, so just FYI, I know that the Baptist church down on Kirkham, I've been talking with them and I forwarded them a webinar to attend about the grants that are available for historically Black churches. And if they did want to in the future pursue one of those, they really do need to get nominated. So having that conversation might be good. They were focusing on something else that they needed to do, but since they were talking to me about zoning, I was like, hey, there's a webinar tomorrow if you want to attend. And they did, they watched the webinar that was sent to us from the state. So that would be something that you might want to think about. It might not be this year's project, but just think in your mind that there might be a couple, if someone wants to get a grant and they need to be nominated, which is what our two state preservation guys have reminded us of, that we might want to look at if they are wanting to potentially get grants in the future, that might be a project to take on.
So do they, would they need to be nationally on the national register, or?
It doesn't sound like they necessarily need to be, but I did not have time to watch the webinar. So I was gonna kind of ask our state guys whether they needed to be national or not. I'm sure they're gonna replay the webinar again.
Was that the one for sacred places?
I'd have to go back and look. I'll look and see. I'll look and see what I sent him, but it was very specifically, I don't think it was, because Sacred Places kind of covers everything. This was for historically Black churches, like very specific for that, and very specific grants for that, which is why I just seen it. And then they were asking about something else and it just immediately came into my mind. So I sent it over and it was literally the next day and they did attend and listen to it. So just thinking ahead that you might need to jump ship slightly, if possible, if someone comes and approaches us with something like that, that they might need help with.
This may be a foolish question after your conversation, but the thing that I would think of, would people know, hey, if we decide we want to do this, we need to approach the Historic Preservation Commission to be nominated. Would they know that we're available as a resource for them?
I let him know that if there was something that they wanted to pursue, to get in touch with us so that we could talk about how we could help.
Okay, great. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that
Yes.
was connected fully.
Yeah, that was hey, there's potentially some grants. because I know you're asking to do some stuff and you're in a floodplain. And there's history, like all of those things. And I was like, hey, but yes, letting them know that if they do want to go in that direction, that there is a group that can help.
And that is like a potential project too, is just education about what the opportunities are out there. You know, I mean, that one worked out because there was that connection and the timing was good, but I'm sure there are other, not necessarily in that category, but like different properties that would
Don't
love
know.
to
Yeah.
don't
Just
know.
general sacred places.
Yeah.
You know, that
The
one.
Route 66.
Kind of
Yeah.
sharing what they brought here and sharing that wider at Glasser. But that's a project to, you know, to do that.
Get the word
education.
out, yeah.
So I think if everybody's interested in doing this, obviously we need to kind of do some research about it. The only project that I had, and it kind of goes along with the church. Obviously, there's the church that's no longer being used as a church on Lockwood. That was something that I kind of was thinking about if we wanted to do a designation. I think it would be kind of interesting. We obviously did the local designation with the Lustron homes, maybe pursuing a national designation, just to kind of go over that process and see how that works. That's something that I've still been thinking about.
Is that property for sale?
You're talking about peace.
Wait, have you jumped to Lustron for national? Were you
No.
talking about two separate projects?
No. I'm just saying as a commission, we did the local designation for the Lustron homes.
Yes.
But as long as I've been on the commission, we haven't done a national designation. And I guess it's just something that I think, and I've been on since 2018, so it's been about 4 or 5 years. So it's like, I think it would be kind of interesting to pursue a possible national designation just as a commission to go through that process so that in the future, if there's anything else that comes up, we kind of are a little bit more familiar about doing that.
So just an FYI, that takes a lot more time and money. It's a
It's-
lot of money.
It's a long, protracted, detailed process and it takes money.
I think
Yeah.
there could be some properties that maybe one day the Ozark Theater or something might be interested in that, but I don't know that Peace is gonna be interested in partnering in that type of a designation at this point in time, and I think you probably really do need the property owners buy-in on that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? Yeah,
I would agree.
yeah.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I think that the national designations are great. I mean, they are very powerful in a lot of ways. But it's also, it's an incredible amount of work. It's, have you ever read one of those nominations? The National Register nominations, they can be like 100 pages long. And it all has to be it's very specific about how everything needs to be described, documented, backed up, submitted. It's powerful, but it's intense.
So the thing that helped for some of the national designations in the past is that at one point, there was someone who had done nomination sheets, like basic sheets for a whole series of buildings, even though they weren't doing anything at the time. And so I have binders of a bunch of sheets that were done in like the 1980s. And it was Ann Morris who did them. And so, when you've got someone who is an actual historian, they know what to do and how to put the things together and do the proper research. So that's why the local's a little bit easier for some of the steps. And you'll see with a lot of our national, the areas that have been national, they were done first. And then the local was sort of done after because someone was able to just use everything that was done the first time. So just know that's a pretty large undertaking. And if you're gonna go for the national, you need to have the property owners on board for that.
So I guess I'm just kind of bringing it up because we've been talking about the Baptist church and I know you said you didn't think it needs to be nationally designated. It could be just locally designated to get the grants or.
Yeah, so I don't know if it necessarily needs to be nationally nominated to get the grant. So we can look at that and see what that says. There are certain things where in order to get tax credit funding, you need to be national. But for other things, you don't necessarily need to be national, so we need to just look and see what is specifically necessary for the various grants. But if we did need to do, if we were going to do national, so some of the differences between them are, for the church, it's probably going to be more about the history and less about the architecture, because it's not the original church that was there. And so sometimes the history of it is already so well documented, and there are elements that you can borrow from other people. When it comes to something that has nothing, that no one has created any research, has done anything on, those are much more difficult. So you've got to really hire someone who knows and can do all of that research to put that nomination together.
Do we have property in Webster Groves that's on the National Register?
Lots, yeah.
Our house,
there's-
our
Yeah.
community.
Well,
Oh, you're at the park?
so Webster Park's on the National Register, Central Webster's on the National Register, Marshall Place is on the National Register. There's National Register, part of Rolling Ridge is on the National Register. We've got a bunch of individual homes. I can send you all the list of what, I have a spread or a sheet that has like what year and date it was on the national, when it was local, which are which, and then I actually have in our files, we've downloaded like the Webster Park one's like 162 pages long, I think.
Yeah.
Central Webster's probably almost as long. But yes, there's quite a few. We do have quite a few, but it's been a while.
Since we've had.
I think maybe, well, I'd have to go back and look and see when that we did a amendment to slightly expand the Old Webster National area. So there's a very specific boundary for the national for Old Webster, and then the local for Old Webster is larger. So they kind of overlap with each other. And there was one building that wanted to be added in on the national level. So they did all the paperwork and added their little section for that one more building to expand the national district. That's the last thing we've done in the last few years.
What about the Tuxedo Bed and Breakfast? Is that one?
They're on the National Register, but they've been on the National Register since early 2000s,
Oh, so before it was renovated.
long before. Yeah, that's how they were able to get tax credits. Yes. So yeah, you'd be surprised. Most of the ones that are on the National Register were done a very long time ago, when Esley Hamilton was still busy and working, and Ann Morris, and there were a few key players that were very active and put a lot of things together.
Well, like the Hawken House, I was kind of surprised actually. I thought it was on the National Register since it's been moved. You know, that's when we were doing the study of I-70 in my whole career. A lot of the houses when Route 40 is what that route is now, were moved. So they are very historic, but since they've been moved, they're not National Register eligible. And so, but Hawken House is. So,
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's how it's been moved. There's a few things I've been trying to research about that, because yeah, it's kind of, that one's an unusual one.
Well, now they think that was built
I know,
years later. And
yes,
so there weren't slaves building bricks.
yeah, they think that the
Making
date
bricks.
was wrong. They found some information that.
They've got a receipt for the bricks.
Well, I'm gonna put on my list, I'm gonna send you all the list, just so you can see everything that's national and everything that's local. Cause I've got that, and I can scan it and shoot it over to all of you.
I think there's a map too that draws it out.
So if you go on to our,
Yeah, on this.
on our city website,
Yeah.
Because Eden Seminary is sort of in Webster Park, but it has its own historic district.
Yeah.
It shows this little strange map that
Yeah.
carves it out.
it's a separate,
its own.
it's with Webster, so Webster UN Eden Seminary have an overlap.
That's
Oops, wrong, not gov.
they had their own before Webster Park. It's-
Seminary.
Yeah, but they're in Webster Park, so they. Yeah, I guess they double count.
So when you go on here, well, there's a historic, but the interactive map. And then, sorry, I'm going to share the screen so that everyone can see it. Shoot, why am I? There we go. So on here, you can turn on historic structures, historic buildings, and then in general, what they call historic homes. And so all these sort of overlap. So you can see this purple here, that's the Marshall Place Historic District. And then there's different individual parcels, and then there's an overlay. So there's like the blue, that blue is Old Webster, but then individual properties are on more specifically. So you'll kind of see, and sometimes there's a little jump, like it goes and there's a little historic district here. And then there's the overlap, there's Central Webster, which is all here. And then you've got Webster Park up here. And then this is the overlay of Eden Seminary and Webster University. And then sometimes there's a couple layers. So if there's a building, structure, historic, what am I doing? Sometimes they overlap in weird ways based on the parcels. But there's a bunch of these on here. You have to also turn off business districts so that you don't get confused with the business district.
So that's just national, it doesn't include state.
No. You're either national or you're local. There's not a state level. You're national or you're local.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it doesn't also include local state.
So we don't, I mean, all of our stuff is either national or it's local. We don't have like we don't do a state nomination.
Oh,
I
I guess in the
misspoke.
past, if you're on the National Register, you're on this, most states.
I'm assuming they're,
Because Webster Park was not. It got its national first. And then the city one was much harder to get. Because national is more just,
Set it in. and
is
I'll go.
sort of like just an honor.
Yeah,
But if you get local, then they're starting to get, you know,
means something.
yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of people who I think might regret it, actually. Because it puts more restrictions on their property.
Right,
The national didn't do that,
no.
because that's just an honor, kind of.
It opens a lot of financial doors.
Yeah, you can get kicked off of it. If
Yes.
someone complains about it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can, a property
For
can.
national,
yeah,
Yeah, a
the
property
national
can be delisted if it is altered in a way that compromises its historic integrity. They can
Someone's got to complain.
complain,
oh,
and then that property will be removed, will be delisted.
interesting.
That's about, I mean.
Yeah.
But so that would affect tax credits, right? So you're looking for that kind of thing, but yeah, as far as going before the architectural review board, it doesn't.
No,
It's not the same thing, yeah.
I didn't know you had polling places on.
What?
I didn't know that you had polling places as a.
Oh, yeah.
as a checklist.
Yeah. Points of interest, and we have the historic walks. So you can kind of zoom in, but the historic walks are on here. So it has the layer of all the map walks.
Yard waste.
Yeah, so if you don't know when you have which
what day?
your yard waste pickup is, or your
Mhm.
trash, trash, yard waste, recycling. Business trash containers, every business district where our trash containers are. And this is the city public base. I have even more stuff on mine. I've got a bunch of other cool stuff.
Mara, my question though was about, is there any that are just local and not historic?
Yes,
You weren't identifying those on your map?
no, they're all, anything that's local or national is considered historic. They're all in here
Oh, I
together
see.
as one big blob.
It's not a
So we
designation
can't
anywhere.
differentiate.
No, you cannot differentiate. You have to just go back and know that I have to know what that property is, where it is, because sometimes it might be in a historic district and then it might have its own separate nomination on top of it. So so for example, I'll give you an example. So the building next to the AT&T building, next to the.
Yeah.
That one is individually, I believe, on the National Register as a building, but it's also in the district. So sometimes there's an overlap of those. And then sometimes some of these are kind of odd, like you'll look and you'll be like, wait a minute, the whole parcel for what was Great Circle, whatever they're calling it now. There's one National Register structure there, but in order on our map, we just do it as it's like a blob of the whole parcel.
Is that the house?
Yeah, the house structure. But yeah, there's individual homes and then some are done in order to preserve the land. Like you can actually state that the land and the structure are what are being nominated so that someone doesn't split all the, because the land somehow creates the context for the house or the structure. I know that happened with this piece, if I believe correctly.
The old house that's up on the hill. And then the like
It's-
Rich Burgers that are down below on Gore.
No, this one, it's a house on the side on College, and I know I had to look it up at one point. And it was something to do with the overall land, so there was a land. But I don't know about that, I know there's
It's right next door to Great Circle. And
Would that be a possibility for the church? on
Three.
Third County?
I think that's this
the one
one.
you're talking
That's
about.
this one, 300.
Okay, it sits behind other houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's an individual National Register, if I remember correctly. Sorry, what was that?
I was just saying, would that be a possibility for the Baptist church on Kirkham with like the Shady Creek? Because there is documentation of that kind of being part of the history of the church.
Yeah. I think
Yes,
so,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, because it's the land in addition to the structure and the history of the people who started the congregation and rebuilt the building where it is today. If I'm remembering all the history correctly.
Is that Shady Creek Nature Preserve there that where you are now?
Yes, that's the nature preserve here, and I'm not sure why this one's on here. I have to go back and look as to why it's on there, but yeah, that's the nature preserve.
I think I read something at some point that, actually before there was a building on that site at Kirkham, it was used for worship services that were held outdoors before there was a building.
Yeah, I know there's a lot
Yeah.
of history and I've heard bits and pieces, but I haven't reread any of it recently.
So I guess, is this something that we should just kind of keep on our radar since they did approach you and watch the webinar and might be interested in designation? Is that something that we can kind of?
Yeah, for that one, I just wanted to make you aware that I had hooked them up with the potential for grants. And if they did want to pursue it, we need to look at some sort of nomination mechanism and we need to figure out what level of nomination that would require.
But that could potentially be a project for the commission since we do have an interested party in designation.
That could be if they are interested. Yeah, they haven't specifically said, they just said, thank you so much for hooking us up with the webinar and we'll process it. They didn't specifically say, yes, we want you to start pursuing. So it was just still very early on.
Okay, but just maybe something that we can, again, keep on our radar.
Yes.
But I think just from our discussion tonight, I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts or wants for projects for the commission to do, or if everybody wants to help pursue Carol's passion project. I certainly do, because I know you're passionate about it. I just definitely need to do more research, which I think sounds like our next step if we do proceed with this.
I agree.
So I guess Mara, if you can see if that webinar that you and Carol attended is available for us just to view, that would
Yep.
definitely help.
Yeah.
I took some notes, so I'm gonna kind of start doing a little research on my own. If everybody else can kind of take a little time between now and our next meeting in September. And then
I
if
think,
any of us get, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think with the webinar, they did also give us some potential research links, resources. I will also throw those into the email. I'm pretty sure I saved the resources. So I'll just make sure to give you those resources too, because that might be the starting point for the research, which would require less research on everybody. And I'm pretty sure they gave us a list of resources, and I think I saved it to my desktop of my computer.
Sounds great.
And then I guess while we're kind of educating ourselves on this, if anybody has questions, maybe jot those down so we can maybe bring those to our next meeting. Just to continue kind of clarifying this for us all to move us forward.
And just a quick FYI, so you had 3 single-family dwellings for demolition requests for today. They're working on a list of a number of them. So you will, depending on the timing, we're very, very booked for occupancy inspections, and we require them to do an occupancy inspection for each of the structures. So they kind of limited, I feel like they maybe have another 5 that they're on the list for occupancy inspections. I believe there's another 5 after that potentially on the list. So I'm just giving you a heads up.
And do you know, because the plans were kind of vague, talking about like the
They
Human
have-
Rights Commission and things like that, like, do you know like what
They have no plans
that
at this time. Where was that?
The reference to the UN?
Yeah.
Yes, I was wondering about that myself.
It's the same.
I think they meant to say historic HPC. I
don't know, you think United Nations, UN 2030 Agenda 17, I mean, it's very
It's
specific,
specific.
but I don't actually know
Here it is.
what it means.
Yeah, I wondered what that meant too,
Yeah,
because that is a thing. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about, but how,
So I don't know if they wanna demo the houses and hold on to it until they can do multifamily, or
yeah, that's what I was wondering.
What
They're trying to
is
do.
it?
to assemble.
They're gonna take a whole bunch of lots and make multifamily housing there.
so all of the lots are in.
Yeah. all
Yeah, they're
joined together.
close, yeah, so
That's
there's
what I
there,
think.
and I noticed that some of these properties have been held for many years.
Yeah.
So it kind of seems like they're assembling a large parcel potentially.
The only thing I found okay, that might be an okay sign is that they're taking their time. So maybe they're serious in making it something decent rather than, let's get that over with and get as much money out of it.
Yeah.
But
I'll try to
sorta.
see if they want to come to the next meeting with any other additional feedback, but there are
They
no,
don't have to, so.
they're not required to, but there's no plans at this time. Whereas in the past, when you've seen, there were 3 that came in one particular area, and then they came back in and rezoned to a planned environment unit at the Euclid, and they're building 6 units, and then the back area is being preserved with the trees and open space.
Was that?
Yes, so the plan itself had to go before the plan commission within 1 year, and it did go and got approved for the final development plan. And then I had heard from the architect was working on floor plans and house elevations, but I haven't seen those yet.
So 6 individual units.
6 individual houses, they're on sort of like shared driveways. The units are all clustered. So in like right now it was a series of lots on Euclid, and they're not gonna have any more curb cuts, but you'll go up like 1 and access 2 of the units, and then you'll go up the other and you'll access like 4 of the units. And they're all capped so that the overall square footage being put on that entire big piece of land is the same as if there were individual lots and they were capped at their total square footage. So the units, I don't think can get any larger than 2,000 square feet.
Oh,
Oh,
that's nice.
Yes.
That's
That's-
nice. That's what I was wondering. So they're making it sort of like they're, I mean, that's
Like-
nice
like,
housing. then
It
for
sounds like
Webster.
it's, yeah, welcome and affordable, which.
And the
we-
neighbors were
yeah,
all super supportive of it when it came to the council.
Cool.
Cause
Yeah.
that's, so I guess that's what I was wondering, if they did something like that, like they got rid of some of these little houses and they're gonna make, because. If it were a different kind of developer, they'd be in there, well, let's get them all done and, you know, be much more like,
Off the books, yeah.
yeah.
They're doing them based on timing. They're also doing it based on some of them are like, I know a couple of them were available for sale or whatever. And then some of them are based on waiting because there are renters in some of them. So I don't know how many are gonna come before you, but I've been shown a list.
Yeah.
I've been shown a list, and we asked them to not do, like, not inundate you with 10 at once.
Well, I have to say, when it comes to that kind of demolishing like these three houses, if they build houses that were 2,000 square feet in place of this sort of stuff.
Yeah, these were like 600.
That's what,
Yeah, 700 square
right,
feet.
Yeah.
and especially, I mean, they kind of look a little like they're almost
Yeah.
falling down.
Yeah.
So
They really are. This one that the chimney's like this away from the building.
So it's not like it's demolishing the little house and putting up the.
Yeah, it's, I mean, these were, I mean, from the ones that I saw, they're pretty severely distressed. It's the ones that are like really nice, serviceable,
Yeah.
$350,000 houses, and you read the report and it says, oh, the only thing that's a problem is we need a second handrail on the basement.
Yeah.
And those being
We
demolished
just
is,
had that one on Bacon or Bismarck. or-
yeah, and that's a little hard to take, but if it's something that's in disrepair and isn't serviceable and is really. Once whoever is living in it is done with it, it can be a service to the community to take down those unsafe properties rather than having them sit vacant or whatever, so.
And then if they could just be replaced with small houses.
Yeah, yes, that regular people can actually buy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one on the lower number of 40 whatever, the first one that we.
502.
502, there's a really big grade change from the road to the house. I mean, there's stairs way up. It's like you get winded taking your groceries up those stairs kind of thing. So I don't know. I mean, maybe they're, who knows? He's probably just banking and building everything.
Yeah.
Got a quick council update.
Yes.
Can do a quick council update. Really, the biggest thing that we're talking about right now is the pool. So there will be, we didn't just agree on everything at our last council meeting, but we did agree that we're gonna put the pool bond on the ballot in April 24. And that it will at least be on the ballot for replacing the pool that we have now, which is about 30 years old, with something kind of similar, not smaller, nicer, of course, and a little bit more separate, so that like the kid area will be a little more separated from the other areas. But still having like, you know, lazy river and water, you know, like those types of recreational features too. The big sticking point with council is what do we recommend, an indoor option or not? So there's been a lot of interest in the community to have an indoor option. And one thing that you could do is have like a covering over the lap lane, the lane areas, but it's expensive. I think we could probably afford to build it within our bond capacity that we have. But the annual operating costs don't cover themselves. And a regular pool, our pool right now, depending on what numbers you look like, covers about 85 to 95% of its costs. And an indoor pool is more around 50%. So city would need to subsidize that, which I'm fine with in theory, but you all know we've had some really tight budget years and we don't have $250,000 that's ready to jump into that. So that's
And it's
been-
only gonna go up every year.
yeah,
that
and
goes
that's
by.
kind of the sticking point, and other communities have indoor pools and they are right around that 50% cost recovery, and Mayor Arnold said, and I agree, like, you know, that Crevcore and De Pere, and they're all trying to recover as much as they can, so it's hard to think that we would be able to get a higher percent if they're not able to do that.
Can you share it with the high school? Or
The offer has been
nice.
made. They haven't said no. Shrewsbury and Rock Hill have said no, that they're not interested in partnering. I think that the schools are very interested in renting lanes and having a home
Yeah.
pool for the school.
Yeah, but.
But as far as I know, we have not had any commitments to help with operating costs.
Already
of that.
rent the lanes.
Yeah, so that would be great if that worked, you know, we could also go to the community and say, are you willing to pay extra in taxes to have an indoor pool? I don't know how popular that would be, but that's where it is, so it'll be on the ballot, but that indoor piece is still a little bit in flux. Really, like personally, I really want to do it, but I just can't justify approving it when I don't know where the money's coming.
Well, I have to say this because this was hilarious to me. All right, so my daughter was on the dive team here at Webster and loves to swim. Webster Waves, all that stuff. So her idea is when she wins the Mega Millions, she's going to have an indoor pool for Webster. It's gonna be for the community and the high school. It's gonna have everything. It'll have lap swimming every day, all day, anytime she wants to do it, not just in the morning.
Yeah, I love that. We can name it after her. That's great. Yeah.
Maybe we can box her in and help her buy the ticket.
Yeah. We just gotta pick the winning one though.
I was gonna say mine's a little different because I wanted to make sure that they have a softball field because they're not going to anymore. It's now they merged with baseball field and I feel that
Boys always get the best stuff, don't they?
yeah. So in my mind, if I win Mega Millions,
Yeah.
I'm getting a new softball
She
field.
might like that one too, though.
Yeah.
She didn't do high school softball, but she was always on Little Rec Leagues. So she always liked softball.
Yeah.
She wasn't, great.
So we've got a plan.
So we're set at
Solid.
win.
So we're down to 5. 2 of our members did leave. I will send stuff out as soon as I can. Next meeting is on September 12th. And I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have some demo requests on there. So it'll be a little bit of a mix like this one. Anything else?
All right. Just speaking of indoor pools, one of my coworkers told me the other day that she goes to Webster University to swim, and I went to Webster University and had no idea they had a pool. So there is always that. You have to pay to use it, but. All right. I think we have our notes as to what we need to do in preparation for next meeting. Does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Everybody have a great month. See you in September, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
No.